Hi everyone, I'm Alex Rosenfeld, founder of Freshwater Investments, and this is Coffee with the T-Bird podcast. I sit down with fellow T-Birds who are making an impact in business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Each episode features conversations that explore the pivotal moments, personal motivations, and lessons learned on their journeys. Whether you're a student, alum, or someone passionate about business and personal growth, you'll walk away with fresh ideas. This is a bit more than a podcast. It's a platform for connections, storytelling, and celebrating the global spirit of Thunderbird. This podcast is sponsored by Freshwater Investments. At Freshwater, we make it simple for you to invest in large apartment communities across the United States so you can earn passive income, grow your capital, and benefit from real estate tax breaks without owning or managing property yourself. Hi, Kellie. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, Alex. Glad to be here.
I'm very excited. Very excited about this conversation today. I just last April, I went to the amazing anniversary celebration, 20 years of Thunderbird for Good. And it was a great ceremony, lots of people, lots of new stories I learned. I didn't know much about Thunderbird for Good, and I'm excited to speak with you as a founder of this amazing initiative, of this amazing organization. So let me just start by asking you, so you're standing there presenting, celebrating, but a lot of people in attendance. What did you feel at that moment?
Oh, my goodness. It's hard to believe that 20 years has gone by. So, and it was, it was an emotional thing, right? I mean, to be able to kind of look back retrospectively on it. And as you know, you and I were at Thunderbird together around the same time. I graduated back in 2004, the end of 2004, and very quickly wound up coming to work for the school. Never thought I would. It was just an opportunity. I thought I'd be there for a year or two. Here, 20 years later, looking back at this body of work that the whole Thunderbird for Good team created over the years, it's pretty spectacular and cool, and just cool, right?
Excellent. So why don't you tell us? And so I really want to share with our community what's a Thunderbird for Good is.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this audience knows Thunderbird, right? So Thunderbird being a place that people come together from all different communities, countries, disciplines, sectors to learn how to manage internationally. And we obviously have a lot to offer, right? We've got a lot of knowledge, not only within our faculty, but with our alumni base. And one of the kind of consistent themes with Thunderbird, as you know, is the mission of borders frequented by trade seldom need soldiers. So this idea, if you do business with people across borders, there's less likely to be conflict, right? So Thunderbird for Good was kind of born out of that idea that if we help people learn this knowledge, these skills, they can make their lives better. But not everybody can come to Thunderbird, right? There's only a finite number of folks that can come here. So how do you reach people that may never come to Thunderbird, maybe don't speak English, maybe can't leave their countries, financially maybe can't participate? So how do you reach people? And so this idea of, well, can we explore how we bring these educational opportunities to people, mostly in emerging markets, but really broadly, how do we share the Thunderbird mystique with people? So that's how Thunderbird for Good was kind of the core of it as it started.
And you were part of the founding team, or was it your idea? Was it somebody else's idea, or how did it come about?
It wasn't my idea. It was actually one of the former presidents of Thunderbird, Angel Cabrera. It was his idea, and so when I graduated in December 2004, I very quickly determined that I did not want to go back east to the snow in January to job search. I thought I will just stay right here in the Arizona sunshine and do my job search right here. And so because I had all this time on my hands, I wound up volunteering for a program called Project Artemis. And this was a program that Professor Steve Strasser, who I don't know if you had him, but he was...
Yeah, I took his class.
Me too. Entrepreneurship. So he was the entrepreneurship guy, and he had been asked to create this program. And I don't know if you remember, but at that point in time in January, Thunderbird didn't get, like, there was a big window of time. I think it wasn't until like mid-January or later January that people came back to school, so people could go do winterims and things. So there was this period of time where there weren't really a lot of students on campus, that they were doing this first program. And the program was that a cohort of 15 Afghan women entrepreneurs were brought over to Thunderbird for this like 2-week boot camp. And they would be taught all the basic skills about starting and growing a business. And then they'd be connected with women mentors who would work with them remotely after they went home. And so Steve was just running around like a nut and just desperate for help. And I thought, hey, I'm a woman of leisure now, right? I just graduated. I got some time. So I volunteered, and I just did whatever needed to be done and helped out and got people to where they needed to go. And so did all of those things, and just enjoyed it, right? And thought nothing of it other than, okay, I'm helping out some, colleague, a friend, and this is great. Because, when I was at Thunderbird, my background's all sales and marketing. I didn't have any international development background at all. I didn't have any background in Afghanistan. I didn't really take any of the classes other than, IPE. I mean, I didn't have any of that background. So I helped out, thought nothing of it. And then a few weeks later, President Cabrera came to me and said, hey, would you consider coming to work for us? And he said, would you consider being the director of Thunderbird for Good? And I said, what's Thunderbird for Good? And he said, it doesn't exist yet. He said, I've got this like cool name, but I know we want to do more work like Project Artemis. And he knew me. I had been involved, and he said, would you be willing to do that? And I thought, oh, okay. Well, so I said, well, what would my job be? Right? And he said, well, you would have to do good. I thought, oh, all right, that's cool. Do good. He said, I want you to get other people involved in this work. Like, don't be the only one doing it, and basically use it as an opportunity to create global citizens, whether those are our students, our faculty, our alums, the people communities, and kind of use this as an opportunity for engagement. I said, all right, do good. Opportunity for engagement. I said, what else? He said, we are global business educators, so stick with global business education. He said, don't do food drives, don't do 5K runs, don't build hospitals, don't build bridges. He said, those are all like good things, but they're not what we're good at. So stick with what we're good at. I said, okay. Mm-hmm. So do good, get people involved, stick to our knitting, global business education. I said, anything else I need to know? He said, there's no money.
That's no problem.
I know. He said, I'll pay for your salary for a year, maybe 2, but you've got to figure out how to do this work either without money, or you've got to figure out how to find money. And honest to God, I don't know why I took the job. I think in the back of my mind, I thought, well, this will give me some runway to find my real job, right? I'll do this for a little bit of time. I'll stay in at that time, Glendale for a while. And 20 years later, I never left. And so that's kind of how it started. So I wish I could say that I had the brilliant idea for it, but I my claim to fame is I just said yes to a crazy job.
Excellent. You mentioned Project Artemis, and that was the first project of Thunderbird for Good. Can you talk a little bit more about this project?
Sure. So that was as I said, that was the very first project, and it was kind of a traditional international visitor style project, right? So this idea of we'll bring people over here and we'll teach them and we'll train them. So we brought Afghan women over in these cohorts. They were here for 2 weeks, and they would take classes with our faculty. They'd do site visits. We'd do dinners. I mean, we took them to the Grand Canyon or Sedona, so they got to kind of experience So it was a pretty cool project. The one that I volunteered in, so I didn't have any background in terms of preparing it, but I was just a volunteer. That was the first one, and it really focused on women who were they were a lot of women that were from Kabul, the main city.
Mm-hmm.
It was taught in English. So for me, again, I don't have any development background. So when I was asked to think about how do you perpetuate this, and we knew that we wanted to do another one of these, I kind of looked at it from a business perspective because, again, I had no development background at all. So it just like from feel, like what does it feel right? And so the first thing that kind of jumped out at me is I thought, well, if you're at that point in time, if you were an Afghan woman who spoke English in the country, you probably already had some things going right for you, right? You already had
Yeah.
access. And so my first thought was, we probably shouldn't be conducting this in English, right? We should probably be conducting this in Dari, right? So that we were truly reaching people that would not have the opportunity to get this education otherwise. So there became a big logistical issue because how do you do that? How do you get a translation? How do you find the right translators? Everything takes twice as long, right? How do you kind of, so it was a real kind of a logistical puzzle at the beginning. And so then when we did the next one, and it turned out to really help us reach the right people. But then, kind of follow-ons, the next issues were, well, how do you get people outside of Kabul, right? How do you find people in these really remote areas? We wound up using radio. We wound up doing, people probably don't know this, but we did these massive radio ads all across Afghanistan advertising this program. And it's funny because people, even to this day, will say that they know about Thunderbird from hearing on the radio, but it works. So we got the women in. And so basically we did that program kind of, and the way that the challenging thing about it is the fundraising. All of the money is always the sticking point on this thing. And with money, you can do just about anything, but it was always this kind of grind. Every time we did a new program is we would have to basically fill up the bucket of money to use to produce one of these. And then we would produce and the bucket would be empty, and then we'd have to go and do it. So we would do these every 18 months or so, just kind of grindingly trying to get money out. And the other thing is that, in the early years, Afghanistan was in everybody's minds, right? But then when the next big thing comes along, people forget about it and they go, oh, it's Syria or it's whatever it is, right? And they shift their dollars there. And there's not a lot of there hasn't been a lot of kind of corporate interest. It's not like Starbucks was keen on developing things there. So it was really difficult to get corporate money, and the exception for that was Goldman-Sachs did jump in and was really wonderful. But the so then it was kind of trying, like, how do you get money? And then from a government perspective, again, shifting priorities. Where does money go and how much money? And then the government at that time decided that they didn't want to do a lot of little grants. They wanted to do big, massive grants. So then a lot of projects fell apart. So the last project that we did with Project Artemis was 2016. And something that might be actually really interesting to alumni is that if you remember, around 2016 was when there was the whole kind of shut down of visas from Muslim countries. And we found all these amazing women to come in for the cohort, and we could get a single visa. We got turned down for every visa. So we thought, well, where can they go? Like, if they can't come here, where can they go? And well, they could go to India at that point in time on tourist visas. So we said, all right, let's take the show on the road. And we actually took a couple of the faculty, Steve Strasser and Dr. Mary Sully DeLuque, who's still at Thunderbird, total rock star. And we went to India, but what we did is we then tapped into all the Indian alumni. You remember Dinesh from our,
Of
he
course,
rock
yeah.
star, right? I mean, who doesn't, right? So he was one of the ones that jumped up. We had a ton of alums that jumped up and said, and they did different stuff. Well, I'll give you a classroom to work on. I'll take care of all your logistics. We'll host you for a dinner. I'll make sure that you have what you need in our city. I'll pick you up from the airport. I mean, it was amazing. And so we just got surrounded by like the Indian Thunderbird alumni. And it was fabulous. It was such a fabulous, fabulous program.
That's
So,
great.
so that was kind of the last time we did it. And then we just weren't able to get money. We just weren't able to find money for that particular program. That it kind of led to transitioning to other programs. And I could talk your ears off about the history of Thunderbird, but
I'm curious about the alumni of this project, Artemis. All these women that are in Afghanistan right now. Are you staying in touch with them? Are they safe today? What's their?
it's hard.
If
It
you
is.
can,
It
if you
is.
can share anything about it.
Yeah. So as you know, when everything collapsed there, it collapsed really quickly. There was really no time to prepare, no time for anything, and it was I think it was like a month that they had to get out. And so in the early days, there was this kind of recognition around, people here that have been really good to the U.S. government that we need to take care of, people that were translators, had worked for the government. And then there's this whole community of people, a lot of them women who were in leadership positions, whether that was in business or politics, that would be at risk. And there was this messaging that came out that said, okay, there will be these various programs that and those of us that did this work would fill out these forms and put them in. And the idea that there would be these evacuations and there was processes and there was a lot of encouragement to go to kind of third countries, like go to Pakistan or Tajikistan or, kind of and then there would be this process to help, right? And so the first kind of 2 weeks that happened, I mean, as you imagine, we just had, so many women, because we not only did the program with Project Artemis, but we did the 1,000 Women program in Afghanistan with Goldman-Sachs. And so we had hundreds of women reaching out to us. We had basically the entire Thunderbird for Good team for weeks were just filling these forms out for the government. I mean, we brought students in, we brought everybody we could, and just because you had to fill out all of these forms, you had to get all their documents, you had to get all this stuff and get them in the system. And then there was this promise that would be moved through. And as it got closer and closer, it became apparent that this was not going to be the case, right? That there was it was not organized. There wasn't a good plan. There was too many people. And then it became this kind of really scary thing about the airport. And the Taliban took over the airport there would be kind of like vans of people that were supposed to be on evacuation flights and they couldn't get through, or they would be terrorized, and it was terrifying. So then people realized, okay, we're not going to get out this way. We're going to try to get out through the borders, right? And then that created these terrible things. So it just was this horrible, horrible, horrible process where, as it got closer and closer to that end of August deadline and in fact, I think it was only maybe 2 weeks that this hope happened, because I think they had to be out by the end of August, if I'm remembering. And I'm pretty sure that the day that they fell was August 15th. So it might have only been 2 weeks. I mean, it felt like a lifetime. Of course, we're all connected, right? All these women are on Facebook and on LinkedIn and all the social media and Messenger and WhatsApp. And I mean, that's just the world we live in, this connected world. So in real time, we're getting these messages, help me, help me, help me, help me here. I'm here. I got out. I didn't get out. I don't know what I'm doing. I've been in threats. My husband was taken and I don't know where he is. Just horrific stories. The Taliban have come and my parents are being terrorized. They're threatening to take my mother away. One horror after the other. So it became this process where we were told, okay, you've just got to use the administrative path, and it didn't work. So consequently, I mean, some women got out. Some women got out.
That's great.
Most women did not. And even women did get out, there was no good support system for them, even though they were kind of instructed, like, get out to a third country. But then once they got to the third country, the countries don't want them. Pakistan was like, we're going to send you back to Afghanistan, right? There was just too many, right? I mean, and it's understandable, right? You get flooded with refugees. It's kind of understandable. And I think they were really struggling. They didn't have the infrastructure to handle it. People couldn't work. They couldn't work legally. There was no resources. So it was just this mess, this absolute mess. And, to this day, there are still so many women in there that are just stuck, right? Or have their lives are shadows of what they were. They were
on hold.
Women no more. So,
well,
it's heartbreaking.
Must have been a tough time for you personally too. I guess if you knew them personal and you hear all the stories.
I mean, it's terrible, right? Because it's like we know these people. I know these people, right? You know them over decades, right? Because the first time I met a lot of these folks was 2 decades ago. So you just like us, right? I see you on Facebook. You see you got kids now, right? It's the same sort of thing. Closeness now that you have because of the digital piece, and it's you feel so ineffective, right? It's like you can't. Yeah. What can you do? And so you do what you can. You try to be as sympathetic and empathetic as you can, but at the end of the day, it's that horrible feeling of helplessness of like, I wish I had the power, but I don't. But yeah, I mean, it's tough.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
I know it's tough, but thank you for sharing that. So let's switch gears for a moment and go back to beginnings. Go back to your childhood. Let's talk about where did you grow up and. Maybe talk about your family, your parents, and
sure. I don't know if you can see, but behind me you can see the Pittsburgh poster and Heinz ketchup poster, and there's a Kennywood Park poster up here. So I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I grew up there a million years ago. My brother and I were just one sibling, a younger sibling, and so I spent I had a great childhood. We grew up, in the same place and went to undergraduate also in Pennsylvania. I went to Pennsylvania State University. Mm-hmm. My first job was in Pennsylvania. And so that was kind of my basic start.
What was your dream? What was your dream job when you were in high school?
I don't know. You have all these like goofy thoughts when you're younger. You're like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer, or oh, I'm going to be a geologist, or I'm going to be an archaeologist, right? And I'm an artsy sort of person. So, I'm going to be an artist, or I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be all this. And then you kind of like rubber hits the road. You're like, okay, what am I going to do? And my dad's an entrepreneur. And so when I went to college, I basically thought, I took business in college just because that was what my dad did, and I thought, all right, that seems reasonable. So I kind of fell into it. But I think because I'm so artsy and creative, I went a marketing path. So I had all my marketing degree, and I had a minor in English. So I don't know that I totally knew what I wanted to. I wish I was one of those people that was like, this is what I'm meant to do my whole life. I'm going to be a veterinarian. But I wasn't. I was just kind of figuring it out as I went along.
What business your dad was in?
So my dad actually just retired recently, built up a really successful business as a distributor of restaurant equipment. So like ice cream machines and chicken fryers and all sorts of stuff, which turned out to be a wonderful thing because he would bring all this stuff home. And we had like a big freezer in our garage that was just filled with samples of ice cream that he would do all these demos. And My house was always the popular place for sleepovers because you could sneak down in the middle of the night and eat ice cream out of the big freezer.
Nice. So you heard all the business entrepreneurial stories around the dinner table.
Yeah. So that, it was, and I'm sure I got it also just by genetic, pieces. But so that was the environment that I guess both by
That's great.
nature and nurture both got it from my dad.
So who were the biggest influences in your early life, except your dad?
I think both my parents, so I would say for sure. My dad was definitely from the business side, and my dad is like super street smart, right? He's so clever and so engaging, and he's like the guy everybody wants to be around, right? Just kind of observing that he's also a musician, so he's got that showmanship, and so kind of absorbing that and thinking, oh man, that's charisma is amazing. Like, I want that. And then my mom no longer around, but she intensely creative, very, 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 very creative, and very like a painter and sculptor and all these things. So I think I got a little bit of both from both sides.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. So how did you hear about Thunderbird? Why did you decide to go there?
Sure.
You had so many opportunities to stay on East Coast, so many great business schools, but you picked Thunderbird.
Well, all right. So my post undergrad college experience, my first job was in retail, which was terrible, right? It was a great job. I was in a rotation program. I had a good salary and stuff. It was horrible, and I was horrible at it, and I did it for years. And I finally kind of got out of it, and I wound up getting a job in, of all things, a large commercial cleaning company in Pittsburgh. Like one that manages, like they cleaned the airport and Three Rivers Stadium and Carnegie Mellon University, like large office space, hospitals and things. So I got this job doing marketing for them. And that led me into that industry randomly, into this janitorial industry. And then my next jump was into the manufacturing of commercial cleaning chemicals. And so I was recruited for this company that was based up in Massachusetts. So I moved up to Massachusetts, and they brought me on board to create training. First, I was brought on board to create training programs for them. And so I came in and made training programs, and it was a small company. Eventually, it was bought by S.C. Johnson, and so it was a division of S.C. Johnson. So then I started doing product development. They pulled me into product development. It was a small enough company that they would just pull you into things, right? I had no chemistry background or anything, but here I was working with the lab, formulating a line of industrial degreasers, right? Like super random. I was in factories in Georgia learning about different sort of solvents would dissolve different kind of fats. And it was very random. So then what happened was, and I'm getting to the Thunderbird piece because this is relevant to it, is that we had a very small international division there, and they needed some marketing help. And so they came to me, and I was single, and I had done some international travel, and I was interested in it, and I was willing to do it. And everybody else was like married with kids, and they didn't want to travel. So they asked me if I would take on some of this work. And I said, oh, sure. So it was like, oh, it'll only be 10% of your job. So it was 10%, then it was 25, then it was 50, then it was everything. So then I became the international marketing manager of this company. And we had an international sales team, and two of the sales guys were T-Birds, right? So they one had China and one had Japan, and like they were really respected at the company, and they were like put on a pedestal. And I was like, why are these guys like treated that way? And everybody said they're Thunderbirds. I was like, what the hell is a Thunderbird, right? I had no idea. So all I knew was that if you had that designation, like you were it,
special.
Right? You were special, and that and people just talked about Thunderbirds in tones, right? Reverent tones. So I loved that job, but then the company acquired a big part of a diversity lever, like a Unilever thing. I mean, it was, and they were like shutting down the Massachusetts factory, and they wanted me to go to Racine, Wisconsin. And I said, I do not want to go to Racine, Wisconsin. I said, I'm single, and that's cold. I'm not into that. So I took the package. And at that point in time, I was like, well, now what am I going to do? And I thought, oh, I've got time. I've got money. I'll go to Thunderbird. So that's how I got to Thunderbird. I came to Thunderbird and I dropped out of life. I was 35. I dropped out of life. I went and did the full-time program and just became a student for a year and a half, something like that. So that's how I came to Thunderbird. I always thought I'd go back to Massachusetts or Pittsburgh, and I never did. I stayed in sunny Phoenix.
Excellent. And so can you talk a little bit about your experience at Thunderbird? If I remember correctly, you were a part of Thunderbird student government?
No,
right?
no. I was DOS Tour. I was the editor of DOS Tour.
Okay, you were the editor, right?
I was.
There you go.
Newspaper. Yeah, I loved Thunderbird. I mean, I was thinking about this. I think every era thinks that they were there at the best time. I think the only era that I think probably felt like they got ripped off is the COVID kids, the poor people that were there during COVID. But everybody talks about their era as being like the best time, right? Back when we were there, you did this, right? And we went to school when it was in Glendale, which was, you were like in a little bubble away from the rest of the world. And part of the deal with Glendale was there was nothing there. It was like a sea of Applebee's, right? There's no public transportation. The food was terrible. There was no nightlife. There was nothing to do. It was in suburbia. And so as you know, you kind of like said, all right, well, we're going to hunker down on campus and just make our own fun. And so my recollection of the time at Thunderbird was just this, challenging time, but also incredibly social time. And it was so fun meeting people and working with them and working on projects and having barbecues, right? Being at the Fish, having a barbecue, I think it was just a remarkable time. And like every T-Bird, you kind of think, boy, if I could go back.
Yeah, that's great. So you graduated and you became a Thunderbird for Good co-founder, if I can say that.
Yeah, thank you. But for employee number one, maybe.
And I can see the theme of you having no background but jumping at things and doing things, which is. Did you have any fear that it's going to be a challenging job or you won't be able to raise money because you have no background in fundraising? How did you deal with those thoughts?
Do you know what? I look back and I think I really should have had those thoughts. I don't know why I didn't have those thoughts. I don't know if it's because in the early years, I always thought it was going to be temporary. Maybe that was it. Maybe I didn't think the stakes were that high. I don't know. Maybe just because being at Thunderbird feels so natural. It just feels like, I feel like I should be here, whether it's as a student or an employee. I'm like, it just clicks, the type of place. I should have been a lot. It was hard. It's super hard. It's still hard. And, you remember is that the school has gone through some really hard and transformative times in the last 20 years. I've been through, I don't know how many name changes, leadership changes, logo changes, campus changes, who were owned by. I feel like I've had 1,000 different jobs in the 20 years, but part of the deal that was interesting is because all of this change was going on, people kind of just left me alone. And as long as I didn't make any trouble or cause any harm or cause any money issues, and I never did. I 100% paid for myself and more over the years. People just left me alone. They let me, and there were times when I would go, I don't know, years without really having a lot of, like a boss. Like there was, I reported to people, but people had a bigger fish to fry than me, and so they just let me go. So I just kind of quietly just kept on doing it, and again, because I didn't know what I was doing, I would just figure it out little by little, and just took it like it was a business. Said, okay, I've got a P&L and I've got a mission and I need to get this stuff done. And I just need to think about how to do it and how to operate within this really uncertain situation with Thunderbird where there's no money and there's never any money. There was never anything. And just how do I figure it out? How do I find more money, find more opportunities, figure out how to do more creative things? And
well, it seems like you found quite a bit of money and quite a bit of opportunity. So tell us about Thunderbird for Good today. What it's like, what programs you're running, what impact you creating on the world. Tell us about all the good stuff.
Thunderbird for Good is awesome. And I have such an awesome team of people. I mean,
how many people do you have?
So there's 8 of us right now. We've got another 9th one that we're hiring for. There's another person that's coming into the team soon. And then we have a ton of contractors all over the world. So a ton in Latin America. We just hired a woman in Indonesia. So using contractors really helps us be real flexible. So we've got contractors, we've got employees, and we're just we try to be really flexible and fleet of foot to try to figure it out, because it's always this process of finding money, running programs. One program ends, you have to find money for the next program. You have to shift. You've got to move people around. But we do so. We just crossed this past year. I think we crossed the mark of having served over 250,000 people. Believe it or not. I mean, imagine that. Like, that's more than there are Thunderbird alumni, right? By a multiple of almost 5. So there's like 5 times more Thunderbird for Good alumni than there are Thunderbird alumni. I mean, wrap your brain around that.
Wow.
Yeah. So we still do a ton of work with women entrepreneurs. That's something that we've developed like a really deep expertise on. So we continue to do work with there. Right now, we're running a couple different programs in Latin America in partnership with the Inter-America Development Bank, helping women entrepreneurs get into supply chains. So we've got a couple big projects on that. But what's also neat is that we do a lot of these other kind of cool programs that are building capacity in different sort of people, right? And organizations. So we've also done projects where we're helping small nonprofits in emerging markets really get good, like using our expertise around leadership and management. So building their capabilities up so that they can go out and reach more people, right? Kind of a B2B sort of solution. So we're doing that. We're also we are an academic partner to the UN Global Compact's USA network. So basically businesses that are interested in sustainability will join the Global Compact, and then we work with the companies, the organization that serves the companies in the United States. So we do that. And then we got a really cool thing that we're working on right now is that we're actually supporting the research initiatives of Thunderbird. We have a new rock star deputy dean of research, Jonas Gamso, who's amazing. I've worked with him for ages on different projects, and he was just promoted this year to oversee all of Thunderbird's research. And so we're working with him. And then the other rock star we're working with is Yuvan Naidu, who is a faculty member, incredible faculty member, who also heads up the Thunderbird case series. So those 2 guys, we're working with them on this project that is a grant that is looking at principled innovation of artificial intelligence. And it's essentially bringing in research monies for Thunderbird faculty to write articles and also case studies that'll be used in the classroom around artificial intelligence in kind of a business context and an organizational context, and how that can be done in a way that is principled, right? And kind of an alignment with Thunderbird's Oath of Honor and these things. So that's been a really cool grant. And then we created a whole group of student fellows that we've hired that are the Principled Innovation Fellows. And those students were brought on board to support the faculty. So they're learning about research, they're learning about artificial intelligence, they're helping develop this whole thing. So that's been a really cool project that is probably people wouldn't have any idea that Thunderbird for Good was involved in. But
that's great.
Neat.
That's great.
It's super neat.
So you've taught so many people in your program, quarter of a million.
Yeah, quarter of a million.
Quarter of a million.
Million is next. Yeah.
Is there one story from the field that still gives you goosebumps?
Oh my gosh, this is the thing is like there's so many kind of cool stories. So, all right, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you two. One's
There you
short,
go.
one's longer. So the short one is that this week I'm going to be dialing in to observe the dissertation, the PhD dissertation defense of a woman that was in my first Project Artemis program. So this was a young Afghan. I know, is it crazy? This
Wow.
was a young Afghan woman that when she did her application, her business growing up was she and her brother would take hard beans and boil them so that they were soft beans and then sell them in Kandahar as treats to people passing by. Right? That was where she came from. And she's going to be a doctor. She's a PhD in gender studies, as of this week. So like that
Amazing.
blows my mind, right? I mean, and
Exactly. Yeah.
right. And she reached out to me not long ago. She said, I'm kind of at the end of this process and I'm reaching out to all the people that were instrumental in helping me get there. And she's like, and you're one of the people that came to mind because of this program and this opportunity and opening up this pathway for her. So that's one of those things I go back and think, wow, that's what this is about, right? That's impact. So that's
That's
a
great.
personal story. And then the other story that I think is one of the coolest stories ever, let me see if I could tell it quickly, is that, we'd done all this work in Afghanistan and we were trying to figure out, this was relatively early on, how we get into other parts of the world. And back in, I want to say 2008, one of the commencement speakers was an alum, Luis Alberto Moreno, who was the president of the Inter-America Development Bank. So he's an alum. He was very continues to be very successful, smart guy. And as he was getting shown around Thunderbird, he said, well, of course, I'm always on the dog and pony show, and here's our Thunderbird for Good people. So I'm talking about Thunderbird for Good. He says, well, that's great. But have you ever just wanted to work in Latin America? And we were like, yes. And he said, well, okay, well, I'll make the introduction. So he introduced us to his gender people. And the gender people said, okay, so where do you want to work? We're like, well, we work in Afghanistan. I don't know that there's anything more challenging than that in Latin America. Maybe, maybe not. But we're game to go wherever. Where do you want to, where do you need it? And so they gave us a list of countries that were kind of their hot ones. And on the very top, the very first one was Peru. And at that point in time, Mary Sally DeLuque, who has worked for years on Thunderbird for Good programs, was walking past my office and she had done her Fulbright in Peru. And I just yelled out, hey, Mary, what do you think about Peru? And she's like, oh, yeah. She starts saying, oh, they're entrepreneurial. And then she roll out. She's like, it'd be a great place to do that. And she's like, you need to talk to Carlos Neuhaus. I said, okay. And I'm like, Carlos Neuhaus. She's like, he's an alum. He's been on our, Thunderbird Global Council. He's really engaged. I'll make an introduction to you. So she walks back to her office and like, not even before she gets there, I get this email message from Carlos Neuhaus. Now, mind you, Mary would not have had the opportunity to even make this connection seconds after this happened. I'm like, this is eerie. Like, this is the universe. And Carlos writes to me and says, hey, I know you don't know me, but I heard you speak about Thunderbird for Good. And would you ever consider doing any work in Peru? He says, I'm friends with the managing director of the largest microfinance bank in Peru. We've got about, $2 million that we can use to do work in Peru. And they're really interested in working with women. I said, oh my God, this is amazing. So I go back to the IDB folks. I said, hey, I've got this opportunity. What do you think? And, the organization was called Mi Banco. They said, oh, we love Mi Banco. They're incredible. Yes, 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 yes. So, and it turned out at that time, the way that it worked is it was a whole matching thing. Like, so if you found, $1 million, they would give you a match of like 60%, like 40, 60. So you'd be able to really amplify money. And again, I didn't know what I was doing on this stuff. Like, I had no idea. I never did anything like this before. But I knew business. So got the Mi Banco folks on it. So I said to Carlos, I said, hey, who else do you know? Because every dollar that you get in, we can amplify that, basically, by like 120%, something like that. And I said, what else do you know? And he knew everybody. He's a T-Bird, right? He knows everybody. So he In Peru, instead of being like like country clubs with golf, like we would have here,
Hmm.
their big deal is surf clubs. So you go, you surf in Peru. It was like evidently the thing that you do, kind of where business deals get done is in surfing. So he was surfing buddies with the Australian ambassador to Peru. And they're out surfing one day and say, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And Carlos is talking about working with his alma mater in this program. And the guy says, "Hey, you know what? My prime minister was just here and he pledged 2 million Australian for poverty alleviation. And we don't know what to do with it. Maybe you guys could use it." And Carlos was like, "Oh, well, I'll introduce you to Kellie. We'll introduce you to, put us in and they were like, "Yeah, this is great." They threw the money in. I was like, "Holy moly." So they threw that money in. So go back to the IDB and say, "Okay, I got another," it was like 1.6, I got another 1.6 million. Oh, great. And then it's like, okay, then I was like, okay, what else, right? Because money begets money. Well, what else can we get? Who else can we get? And we had worked with Goldman Sachs in Afghanistan on their 10,000 women program. And so I went to them and I said, "I know Peru isn't on your short list. I know you've got they're really focused on the BRICS." I said, "But what if I told you I could get you a 10,000 women program at a 60% discount?" Because then you don't have to put a little bit of money in. And
Right.
why not? And we're working with the Inter-American Development Bank, and we're working with, we're going to be able to pool in microfinancing. So we've got this microfinance bank, so we're going to be able to put loans with the education. And they were like, "Yes, we're in." So Goldman Sachs came to the party and they gave us a bucket of money. So we wound up getting this massive amount of money to be able to do this program. We did one part was a 10,000 women program, and then the other was a program called Salta, where we trained 102,000 people across Peru. I mean, it's massive, right? That's a huge amount of people. So
And you
I
train
love
them,
that
and you train
story.
them in basic business skills.
Yep, exactly. What we did is it was almost like a revival meeting. We went all around the country and we would just have these big meetings, and we worked with local partners to be able to pull this off. And we would go into these remote towns and we would find temporary space, whether it was a basement or a hall or whatever. And we would go out and recruit through the Mibanco networks and bring all these people in. And it became like this big event. And so for 3 years, we went through the country and we would just reach people where we could and bring them in for these. And they were smaller. They were like seminar events, right? But bring them in. But then it linked back to having them be connected to Mibanco. So there was linkage to other things. So I love that story because
That's amazing story.
Thunderbird, right? It's entirely Thunderbird. It's Luis Alberto Moreno connecting us. It was Carlos Neuhaus connecting us. It was all of these connections. It never would have happened without Thunderbird alone. So I mean, always, I cherish when alumni come to me and say, "Hey, my company wants to do this," or "I volunteer with this organization," or "I know somebody in the government that wants to do this," and they make those connections. And that's how we've found so many opportunities over the years, is just that, the Thunderbird Army is just out there.
That's a good segue for my next quick topic. What message do you want to share with Thunderbird alumni?
Well, okay. So I have my Thunderbird for Good hat, which is, of course, like, "Hey, help me out," right? Who do you know? Who can you introduce me
Exactly.
to? What do you want? And if somebody hears this by chance and says, "Hey, I have a good lead," right? And a lot of people will come to me with need or ideas, but where the rubber hits the road is, does that lead to funding? Because with funding, you can do so much. And sometimes you don't need a lot of funding. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff for really not a lot. And anymore, you can do some really cool stuff just virtually. So it doesn't have to be like $1 million. I'll take it, but it could be smaller money. But if somebody's got a good contact, somebody that they know that they would kind of be willing to facilitate an introduction, and would want to kind of, again, get involved that way, we would love to do that. And it doesn't just have to be with entrepreneurship. It could be anything that has kind of a social impact that feeds back into our expertise in management and leadership, right? Those things. So that would be my Thunderbird for Good hat is, help a sister out, make some introductions. And then my Kellie Kreiser hat is just, and I know every single person on your podcast is going to say this about getting involved, but yeah, just, get involved at whatever level, and show up at a global reunion, right? That was a hell of a party, right? That was a great
Yep.
party. I wish more people would have come to that party. There's global reunions happen, I don't know, every year, every other year, something like that. Come to a reunion, go to a chapter meeting. The school actually really does need Thunderbird alumni who are willing to help with some interviewing of prospective students. We actually are doing really, really well. Our admissions is way, way up. And as part of the admissions process, everybody gets the kind of the final thing is you get a Thunderbird alum talks to you just to kind of see, like, do you have that mystique, right? And so if people are willing to do a couple interviews, that's a huge deal. Mentor a student, offer to, people that maybe want to do a Zoom talk to, like, working with a student club. That's a cool thing. Like, just, there's so many cool ways to get involved, even if your life is not such that you can get on a plane and come back to Phoenix.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's talk about your PhD. You're not still learning. You're still doing things that you have no background in, and you're doing PhD in AI and creativity.
Exactly.
So let's talk about it.
Sure. So I'm on like a super, super slow roll of this PhD program. But, one of the beautiful things about working for a university is that you get an education benefit. And I thought, well, I'm leaving money on the table if I'm not taking advantage of this, right? So, and ASU has been really remarkable. I wasn't so sure in the beginning, but I'm a convert. I'm a true believer. It's an amazing institution, and there's so much there. So many cool people doing so many cool things. And so I thought, what the heck? Use this as an opportunity. I can take my time with it. So I'm in this PhD program that's at the School of the Future of Innovation and Society. And the program is called the Human and Social Dimensions of Science and Technology. So it's super wonky. It has, it's something totally different, but I'm super interested in how AI and creativity and kind of artistic production come together. And so I'm interested in artists that are using AI to create work and kind of how they're navigating those things. So I've been trying to learn how to do this, learn how to have a research agenda. I mean, it's slow going, but it's interesting. It'll take me a decade to get through it, but it's super fun. And I'm a super AI evangelist, right? I just think everybody needs to understand it. Even if you're uncomfortable with it, I think everybody needs to get on and understand what it does, what it can do, what are the pitfalls, what are the things you need to be aware of.
How do you use AI today for your job on a day-to-day basis?
I love it, dude. Let's do another podcast. I can talk your ear off about this. So,
we can do the session number 2.
So for me, I think when you're thinking about using AI, you want to think about, is the thing that is important the quality of the output you want, or is the thing that is important the learning to get to the output, right? So in education, the thing that's important is the learning, right? And it used to be that, okay, I do this paper and that is proof that I know this, that I've done the learning to get there and my paper is good. Now I can churn that paper out, and that's not a good proof of the learning. So that needs to be there needs to be a different way to prove that you have mastered this than just the output. Now, in business and work, nobody cares how you got to the thing. It's just the thing. Is your proposal good? Is your letter good? Is your email good? Is your training curriculum good, right? Does this work? Does this hold water? Is this good? So in my work life, it is extremely helpful for proposal development, being able to synthesize information, create imagery that I can use in different ways. And I'm super excited. I mean, we're still got a long way to go, but we're creeping up on it fast with the elements around voice and translation. And that's where I think it's going to be really, really interesting for us in terms of thinking about how will we be able to use AI to very quickly translate materials that were not in some of these languages that aren't as readily available, right? So that I think is super interesting. And then the other thing that we've been doing is that we've got this program called Dream Builder that's a free online training program, dreambuilder.org, if anybody wants to take it. But we are creating there's a character in Dream Builder called Alma. So we're creating an AI Alma that is someone it's a chatbot, but it's a chatbot that will be very narrowly and is narrowly trained to support people just through Dream Builder, right? So is trained to be able to answer everything from technical questions to how do I navigate this content to I don't understand this exercise, right? So she's meant to be your guide. So so that's kind of a cool way we're bringing it in. So,
what advice would you give to Thunderbird students looking for their first job right now?
So I always suggest to students to think about what are the important aspects of what they want their working life to be, like their day-to-day life. People are unhappy in their jobs, usually for something that is just around the experience of the job. I don't like my commute. I don't like my boss. I don't like working in this open environment. I'm not being paid enough. I don't have good enough benefits. I don't get to travel. I have to travel too much. Right? It's too cold here. All of these things, right? And so what I suggest to students is there's a lot of students don't stop and think about those things. What are their non-negotiables before they start job hunting? What kind of person are you? Do you want to work in a big team or a little team? Do you want to be an individual contributor or do you want to manage a team? Do you want to travel? How important is money to you? Do you have geographic considerations? Do you want to live near an airport? Is baseball important to you? Do you want to live in a place where that has Major League Baseball teams? Are you a vegan? Do you want to maybe Kansas City isn't the place for you, right? Like thinking about those things will give students an opportunity to be able to have some filters. So when they look at these different opportunities or say they think about where they want to network, what industries they want to look at, they have some narrowing to them because they can, and then they also have a test to be able to say when an opportunity comes to them, is that in alignment with how I want to live my life, right? And if you stop and think, well, I need a certain amount of money, or I don't want to commute, or I don't want to work in the pharmaceutical industry or who knows? People have different sort of thoughts. They have a way to check the box on that and say, this falls outside of what my acceptable parameters were. So I always talk to students to think about those things as a way for them to kind of really get an understanding about what do they want their life to be like, their day-to-day life.
Excellent. Thank you, Kellie. It was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you had a good time too. And we should get together again when you're in the middle of your PhD program, hopefully sooner than 5 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, if you ever want to talk in depth about AI, that's another one I'll talk you till I'm blue in the face.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it, and always great to see you. All right, take care.